Now, many, many years ago, I was staying at a Buddhist monastery, and the abbess there, this wonderful, wise woman, made a very interesting observation one day. She said, everybody knows not to get caught in hell, but very few people know not to get caught in heaven. At the time I heard that, I didn't really understand it. First I thought, well, yeah, our instinct isn't to get caught in hell, but a lot of people do. And I thought, why wouldn't someone want to be caught in heaven? Why wouldn't somebody want to be caught in enlightenment? This seemed to be a very strange thing she was saying. Don't get caught in heaven. And what she was pointing at, and it took me many years before I realized myself what she meant by saying, don't get caught in heaven, don't get caught in hell. Because if we get caught in heaven, it's just as limiting as if we get caught in hell. It would be almost like saying, to breathe out a great sense of, it feels so good to breathe out. So the goal is to breathe out. But if all we did was breathe out, we'd die pretty soon. We have to breathe in so that we can breathe out. They go together like a right hand and a left hand, like up and down of a seesaw. So when we're in our egoic consciousness, we're always trying to move away from what we think is bad towards what we imagine to be good. But of course, what we imagine to be good is also intimately linked with the appearance of what's bad. No matter how deep our spiritual realization goes, it's always important to know not to get caught in heaven and not to get caught in hell. Actually, to never be caught anywhere. As one old wise Zen master said, to abide in non-abiding. Jesus referred to this state that's beyond the pairs of opposites when he said, the foxes have their holes in the ground, and the birds have their nests in the trees, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head. It was a way of referencing and reminding people that where he is, the kingdom of heaven, isn't really heavenly. It's beyond heaven and hell. It's beyond the pairs of opposites. We've turned Jesus' heaven into the opposite of hell. But clearly for Jesus, the kingdom of heaven wasn't something that's confined or even defined by the pairs of opposites. For him, the kingdom of heaven was something entirely different. It was a state of consciousness that wasn't caught within the dualistic point of view. But the dualistic point of view is a very, very tricky thing. Even in the spiritual teachings that point us back away from our mind and away from our body and help us to transcend and let go of this identification with form, the form of thought, the form of feeling, the form of body. The old and ancient teachings that say, you are not this, you are not that, you are not your body, you are not your mind, you are not what you think. This has been known as the negative way. And the negative way shows up in different forms of Hinduism, in Christianity too, and also in Buddhism. That there's a way that the teachings point us back away from our attachment with all form, both gross and subtle, so that we can realize and wake up to our source as spirit, as presence, as that open field of awareness that's not a thing at all. It's more like a great awake and alive nothing. But if we were to just stay there, if we were to try to hold on to that, then we would just be deluding ourselves once again. It may be a higher level of delusion than being caught in the egoic state of consciousness, but it's a state of delusion nonetheless, because it's really not complete. It's just the opposite of the egoic state. The formless state of consciousness is just the opposite of that state of consciousness which is identified with form. It's important to know that ultimately the idea isn't to go from identification with form to identification with formlessness. It's not to go from being a somebody to a nobody. The truth, the ultimate reality, is beyond all pairs of opposites. You can't define it as something or as nothing. You can't define it as spirit or as matter, ultimately. You can't define it as ego or other than ego. Really, our ultimate nature can't be described in dualistic terms at all. To our minds, it will always remain a mystery, because our minds, the process of thought that we use to apprehend things, can only think in dualistic terms. So our minds can really never know reality directly. And even on the level of our feelings, we feel good or we feel bad. We feel open or we feel closed. We feel happy or we feel sad. Even our emotions are expressions of duality. And in many forms of spirituality, you get the impression that there's almost this condemnation of life, of relativity, that somehow relativity is second rate, and the realm of formlessness is really what it's all about. But as I said, if we get attached to the formless, if we get attached to the inner spaciousness of being, of that pure consciousness, even though it's much more free and it's much more open and spacious, if we get caught there, we've just settled for another higher level delusion.